having to do this kind of underground campaign of whispering, like, are you experiencing this too? Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And putting it together in a report, principal and above level women in leadership in this business before they got the justice that they needed.
All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Circle Back Club, where we name what is broken at work, back it up with receipts, build real power with workers who are done performing. No productivity hacks here, no personal brand advice, just an honest analysis and a community ready to change the status quo, and new episodes every week. Today's episode holds a mirror up to white-collar workers, the people who have healthcare, we have salaries and titles to protect, and names the invisible tax that we pay to keep some of those things. We're not letting white-collar workers off the hook. We're asking us, to look at what their silence and their habits are doing, not only to themselves, to their colleagues, as well as to the workers who have far less protection to lose. And to help us make sense of all of it, I am super excited to invite my friend and colleague, Dr. Dalya Perez. Dalya brings lived experience inside corporate institutions, including Microsoft. She's currently at the University of Washington. She has really, really deep experience building inclusive cultures and high-performing programs. She's going to help us name what the systems rewards, what it punishes, and what it costs workers to stay inside the lines. Hi, Dalya.
Hi, Aparna. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're going to jump right in today. And I am super curious. What is one recent moment where your security felt threatened at work or perhaps even in the broader world? And I'm actually going to start with Lars.
Yeah. Well, first of all, welcome, Dalya. I'm very excited to explore this big topic with you today. So thank you for being with us. To answer your question, it's actually personal for me right now, just with this podcast. One of the things I've been feeling this edge around work security is talking about the things that we don't talk about at work. Literally, what we're doing here on this podcast. And it's made me feel this edge around, am I going to lose some kind of security from doing this? At least the security that I knew before stepping into this. And of course, here, my values come first. Doing this is in service of genuine care and hope that I have for us. And that's what we're doing here. And it's important to name and feel when you're doing something that is a bigger risk, talking it through on what that feels like for ourselves and others. So that's what's real for me right now.
Oof. Okay. Dalya, what's coming up for you? A moment where your security felt threatened either at work or in our world at large?
I've been through such work transitions the past couple of years, but it's been really interesting this past almost a year of being in this organization called the Sisterhood Initiative at the University of Washington, where I work on a team of women of color, and the mission is to support undergraduate women of color thriving at UW. And the culture that is created on this team and some of the practices are so starkly different than what I experienced in corporate America, to the point that I've had such shock. We have staff meetings, first of all, that are 2 hours long, which is unheard of in corporate America, to have a staff meeting. I was on huge teams and our staff meetings were 20 minutes long. You start at the 05 and you end at the 25. And you're just getting through the beats of, what is business critical and what are we shipping. And we spend over 30 minutes at this weekly staff meeting. The director sets the agenda and people share intimate details of their weekends, including dating updates, personal lives and their activism and the marches they've been at. And where I've had these internal moments that almost feel like PTSD, where I'm is there an HR camera in the room? are we allowed to share such personal things at work and bring our whole
Oof.
selves? And this kind of unsettled feeling of what does this mean to be in a workspace and share about loss and struggle and what's hard and parenting and politics and dating and bring more of our messy and intimate humanness into a workspace, which is has been so foreign to me coming out of the corporate sector and into this kind of space. So yeah, that's been an on-ramp to figure out how much do I share about myself for real, for real. Yeah.
That's so interesting that in an environment where you can bring your whole self, like even that can feel a little bit threatening because you're like, is what I'm doing wrong? Like,
Yeah.
because this is not how I've been taught to show up at work. I wanted to start the episode with a little bit of data, and I am going to ask both of you for your take on how this makes you, feel, what it makes you think. And so, when we say the word worker, a lot of people think for them, a worker is somebody who is in a blue collar job. Typically, we rarely think of white collar work and think workers. But these white collar jobs have been really good jobs since the 1980s, right? Like they're the ones with the salaries and the 401ks. But I think what all of us are noticing is that white collar work is not outside the system of security, right? And we see that even in corporations and nonprofits, philanthropy, white collar work comes with a really specific deal. And that deal often sounds like stay in line or perform loyalty or don't make waves or don't complain. And the organization is going to protect you, right? And what that protection looks like is that health insurance. It's the salary. It's a really great title. Maybe they pay for a membership to chief if you're kind of a senior woman in leadership. And I know that that deal worked for a lot of us for a very long time. I would say like that's true for all three of us is that this deal kind of worked well for us for a long time. And then there is a restructuring that happens or a layoff that happens or you speak up about your own humanity or the humanity of people somewhere else in the world and something really shifts, right? And you have to decide, do I say something? Do I protect what I have? Or do I leave? And the data that I wanted to bring in today is actually from Lars's former employer, Catalyst, that's been collecting lots of data about the gendered experiences that we're having at work. And in one report, they find that 51% of women from marginalized racial and ethnic groups experience racism at work. Like they're present to the fact that they're experiencing racism. And that number jumps up to almost 70% in workplaces that have sort of this climate of silence, where either employees don't feel safe speaking up, or it may be that it's an environment where you're not invited to air your dirty laundry. We also know that about 80% of all employees have reported experiencing burnout at least once in the prior year. And 40% say that they're experiencing moderate to severe burnout, right? It's the kind of burnout that's not going to go away if you took a week off. Um, we also know that white men continue to dominate executive and managerial roles in companies with over 100 employees, right? So I guess I'm curious, Lars, for you, like when you hear the term white collar security, what's the first emotion that comes up for you?
Yeah. Honestly, a mix of three things. I think the first thing that I feel, honestly, is a deep breath. Like it's that, okay, I have insurance, I have steady pay, I have a retirement plan. Essential to surviving as a human in this societal context that we live in late stage capitalism. Like that feeling is there. The second piece that comes through is genuine heartbreak. Like there's like it feels physically like my heart is splitting because it's exactly what you're talking about, Aparna, of that security means silence. That security means actual severing in my own humanity, in my capacity to actually like step into cross-class solidarity. Like that just doesn't get to happen. And I'm still figuring that out in myself. So there's this real heartbreak and split within myself. And then I also feel this squeeze in my body. Like it's both like trying to grip my reality. Like I want to go and grab the job. I want to get it. Like it has an energy that's really tight. And it makes it really hard to think about other people and think about other contexts, other reality, like holding a wider lens, which of course we're going to talk about today. So that's what's real for me. And I'm curious for you, Dr. Perez. You've worked inside of corporate institutions alongside them as a DEI leader. What do you see white collar workers most afraid to name?
It's such a good question. I think as a DEI person in a corporate business context, I also felt like I was sometimes the like unofficial therapist of the group. Like so many people scheduled one-on-ones with me to unload the things that they felt like they couldn't say out loud about the toxic workplace dynamics, or one woman was struggling with menopause symptoms and just felt like even saying it out loud in a work setting or to her manager, who was a man, and then his manager was a man, and his manager was a man, going up that chain was like probably all the way to Satya. It was like, oftentimes in engineering teams, it's the chain of leadership is men all the way up. And I'll never forget this woman, reaching out and talking about some of the things she was going through with energy shifts and emotional shifts, and really learning about this season in her life about menopause, and that she just felt like she could not get the kind of support or share about what she was going through in a work context because of sexism and ageism, right? There was like sort of a whisper chain of women in leadership in one business that I was in that literally like resulted in a giant 35 page plus report that I think escalated to HR, and was part of it was published in the Business Insider about some of the toxic dynamics of men in leadership on the team. But people felt too scared to make direct confrontations, or were having not they were feeling pretty gaslit when they did make those direct complaints, right? So having to do this kind of underground campaign of whispering, like, are you experiencing this too? Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And putting it together in a report, principal and above level women in leadership in this business, before they got the justice that they needed. And yeah, and so many other examples of people, really coming to me to unload, and needing a safe place to be listened to about harm that was happening at work, and harm that they felt would be exacerbated if they took it to the proper HR channels, right? And so I think when HR also represents the status quo and de-risking, DEI people end up becoming these pseudo HR therapists that we are not trained to be, but we become the safe space to hear the real deal of where violence and harm is happening in the workplace, and people need safe channels to get support around it.
What's wild to me in your story is that you said it's women that are principal or higher, which means they're not newbies.
Right.
They've been, like you rarely are getting promoted to principal anywhere before your mid-30s, which means you've probably put in a solid 10 years at work in increasingly senior roles to get there. And that you still don't feel, and I suspect because they're also experiencing menopause, like I suspect they're really in their 40s on this chain, that they still don't feel like the organization is looking out for them.
Yeah. Yeah. right? And then can you imagine like the early in career women, um, are, I think some of them, who even knows what kinds of experiences were being missed, um, because people just don't feel safe or represented, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just stuck in these cycles of performance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dahlia, super curious. Like we just talked about you know, the consequences of this group of women at Microsoft building solidarity in coalition with each other, right? It made it to the news. And I'm sure had some probably negative consequences for their careers. But I'm curious, like in your experience, what are some of the like really specific behaviors when you think of competition over collaboration? What does it actually look like in real life?
Yeah. I mean, in my first week working on this product team at Microsoft, my manager was like, "Hey, I want to send you into this like core engineering meeting. I want you to learn a little bit more about like what's being built, what's happening on the products stack. Like you'll be in the room with, some of the leadership team and the XLT and just get a sense of what's happening on the product side of the house, which I think will help inform the culture." And it was such a high level of technical language. Like I would say that I understood maybe 15% of what was actually being talked about in the meeting. Like it was total engineering jargon and super technical. And so I started just keeping a tally of who was speaking and I started timing for how long. And this was virtual, so I wasn't doing this in front of people in a room. But it was really amazing and then I started tracking like, okay, who are the repeat speakers? How much time are they speaking? And I was like, oh my gosh, there's, first of all, so few women in an engineering space and in a leadership space. So many of them get literally cut off in the middle of something that they're saying. And like I watched like the timestamps and the amount of times that women were able to even hold the floor with interjecting, with speaking, with not being interrupted was so disproportionately uh, less than the men. And some of that was just like numbers of how many women engineers and women leaders are there, which is pretty abysmal. And I shouldn't have been shocked by it, but I think I was surprised, as someone who like has been a community organizer and done a lot of racial justice work. I was ready to come into DEI in 2020 and do some work that felt a little bit more liberatory or like that people were ready for some more radical racial justice or equity work in the workplace. And I was like, oh, the bar is like really on the floor. Like this is, there are so few women here, much less women of color. Like um, even like, I would say the majority of women in leadership were white women, but even the cards were just stacked against them in some ways. So, um, and then the competition within the marginalized communities is real. It's really hard. Again, in my role, I stepped into kind of bizarre mediation roles. There was like a conflict early on in my time between two women that were having this conflict about leadership in like women ERG space. And I was like, this is kind of heartbreaking. This is supposed to be the space where we lift each other up. We find ways to shine, to elevate each other. This
But they
is,
become fiefdoms, right? Like
oh my gosh, it was really hard. Like they were in a total confrontation about who, like one of them sort of threatening the other's leadership and one of them was trying to sort of share the platform and the other one was like feeling like it was getting stolen from her. And it was and they were work comrades and they were at each other's throat. It was a really hard situation, right? So yeah, these are um Yeah, the ERG community, sometimes I'm like, this is where they want DEI work to be relegated to. It's sort of like, let's provide some funding, and some of it is meaningful so that ERG, underrepresented communities in corporations and in white collar spaces, can have their pizza parties and their swag and their t-shirts and feel some sense of recognition, and DEI people get hired as kind of camp counselors to lead
Oh my God.
the rah-rah. That's my crude interpretation. And and then there's real like inequitable politics that happen even in those ERG spaces, right?
Yeah. What what do you like? What is the reason for the competition? And I like the thing that I remember the most from my own corporate experience was just the necessity on an annual or biannual basis to come up with a story of why I was better than everybody else I worked with. Like what about me was the most special thing so that I could get a better raise, or I could be at like the top of box one, instead of somewhere in the middle of the pack, which quite frankly, most of us are in the middle of the pack anyways, because that's how stats works. And that's how a bell curve works. And so what's, yeah, like, what do you know to be true of the story that companies tell us, or this sort of corporate world of work tells us about why it's important that we compete?
I mean, first of all, to what you're saying about employee resource groups, like I think camp counselor, while it feels like an edgy read in ways, is also really true of how identity politics creates like a parentalification of employees. Um, and I think that there's something when we like blend that in a bureaucratic environment, when we're putting people in working conditions where you are having to prove yourself against other people, all of that is grounds for dishonesty. All of that is grounds for having to put aspects of who you truly are aside. And then you're creating, to that example that you're giving, two people who are comrades, like you have all of a sudden you're fighting for resources and you're going to, there's repercussions on your body, on your sense of self for having to make those sacrifices. And I think the story of why competition is good is, at least what I've been told for 15 years, is that it's innovation. Like, let's build stuff fast. Let's have the little explosions and we can innovate together. And again, like I just keep coming back to the simplicity of when we are dishonest with each other about who we are and what we care about, we are going to cause harm.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And we've created entire systems in large corporations to let that harm happen and then push it somewhere else and pay it off or whatever. Like the system is designed around that. And, you know, we say we compete so we can innovate, but there's a really, really big cost on us that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah. Dahlia, what's going
Yeah.
up your face?
I mean, I think that I really appreciate what Lars is saying. I'm like, I think there is this spirit of innovation and fail fast, fail forward, fail often. Let's go for it. Let's like innovate. Let's try. Let's ship. Let's test.
Yeah.
This fast moving. You're measured on deliverables. Like, what are you producing at the end of the day, right? And I think some of it is exciting, some of it's thrilling. One of the things coming from the world of academia before the corporate sector that I appreciated about it was there was a fluidity in leadership that it results in that can be interesting. Where I would meet people who were like, oh, yeah, I'm reporting to this person who was my manager, but years ago, he reported to me. And there's this world in which, depending on profit and depending on where the business directives go, that somebody who was your manager becomes somebody who reports to you. And I was like, that's so fascinating, right? In the world of very stodgy academia,
That would never
I-
happen.
it would never happen, right? There's like never a world where I will be like in any kind of leadership above my dissertation advisor. Like he is tenured. There is like a very specific rung of hierarchies that are totally stodgy and unbreakable. And you have to climb this slow one directional mountain. And so I think that there's this like interesting kind of fluidity around hierarchy and leadership that that on one hand I do appreciate. I think that it can it's humbling. It's like I might be driving a product or a feature in a product that for whatever reason has lots of customer stickiness, and suddenly I rise to the top of something. And then 3 weeks later, we realize it's something else. And so I'm reporting to that team now. Like the tides, the sort of agile nature of we move in corporate sector with like where the money moves and where the people move means the leadership and hierarchies sometimes are very fluid. But it also can breed toxicity, and people can be really shisty, can steal from one another, steal ideas, steal the microphone. Certain personality types can dominate spaces. Like it can turn really quickly toxic and sour. And sometimes people who are collaborating on something are like confronted about doing duplicative work from each other. And that's where you see like layoffs happening and people being trimmed out. And,
Yeah.
it's a double edged sword, right?
Yeah, something that I used to ask people when they would come to me with complaints, right? Like something isn't working, they're not getting along with somebody, is off of their manager. I would say, figure out whose promotion you're working towards. And that's going to help you see the root of the problem, right? Because whichever director's promotion you're working towards, those priorities are going to win out. And if you want to protect yourself in an organization, flow with that person because what they want, like, even if it is duplicating some other right team's work, that's what's going to fly. And I think about that a lot, like, especially in a moment like right now where we're just seeing such massive layoffs, not just in tech, but like across all sectors, with possibly the exception of healthcare. That, yeah, who's ready to move up? Like, if you're not on their team and if you're not in the current with them, you're not rising in the organization. One of the things that I'm sure all of us have heard people say is, I can't afford to speak up. I can't afford to speak up. I have a family. I'm the breadwinner. I have a mortgage. I'm a caregiver. I can't afford to speak up. What do you think of that? Is it a real excuse? Is it a real constraint?
I mean, it's a choice, right? I think about this with, in October of 2023, when, the genocide of Gaza began, there was like a community, Palestinians at Microsoft community that were trying to come together and um, do even something as benign as like a cultural awareness of like, here's who we are as Palestinians, here's what the symbolism of the material is on a kufia. Like it represents a fishing line, it represents olive trees.
Yeah.
Here is our history, here's our story. The conversations that I was privy to in those, and like the amount of ratification they had to go through with HR, telling them what they could say, what they could not say. And then some staff members who were like, I am scared. I've got team members who are Israeli. I've got, I'm going to get dragged for this, or I'm going to lose my job for speaking to this. And I'm supporting my elders and I'm sending money back to Palestine. And I'm like, I have a real choice to make about whether I want to be vocal in this moment or not. And you know, respect. I think it's a really, really impossible, hard choice to make. Like a lot of us, as Lars said, sometimes those white collar jobs do feel like game changing, like that relief of, I've got a security net for my family. And so many of us in this sandwich generation are caregiving our kids, caregiving our elders, living in cities where mortgages are outrageous. And so the cost of um, being outspoken or taking a political stance publicly that um, could cost you, could put you on a risk list for a layoff, even though the company would probably never say that that's the reason. Right? Is a liability. It's really hard.
And we saw a lot of that, right? Like, and I think we've seen consistently over the last 2.5 years that that is the real reason why people have lost jobs, not just like Palestinians or Arabs, but their allies as well.
Mhm.
Um, like you're not even safe wearing a watermelon pin at an ice cream shop, right? Like you can get fired there where the stakes are negligible. Like, what are the stakes? It's not like you're doing that on the CES stage. You're just
Mhm.
working at an ice cream shop or a cookie shop. And we've seen that in our community.
Yeah, and I want to speak to like maybe the person who is not even seeing work yet as a politicized place, like isn't even yet there, and saying, family comes first. I'm here for my family so I can put bread on the table, and so I put up with small interpersonal harms to harms happening a continent away because family comes first for me. And I think that rationality is, without going too far into the rabbit hole, is truly the family system that we're in the United States right now today. Family systems haven't always been this way, but the way that we are structured in particularly the white collar worker who has likely moved away from friends, family, whatever that community core unit was that can provide additional support to your family. You're expected to pay for the services in the absence of other people who would otherwise be providing you direct support. And you're not only keeping your capacity to be able to support your family members in multiple generations, but you're also trying to maintain the safety and promise of the upper middle class corporate worker. And those are really tough conditions, obviously not for all workers on a material safety sense, but rough because you do have to sacrifice your morality or your values or your capacity to care, feel, and act on behalf of your own safety or the safety of others from that. And I just want to talk to, the folks who might be there that, yeah, like these are the conditions that we're in. And it takes education, it takes a lot of conversation with other people. It isn't just you and your family making a decision about, do I take risks? Like that actually is untenable. That's why we don't. But when you start to hold a wider lens of care, when you start to see that your family is also impacted by this, that you can see that there's a real constraint and pull your lens a little bit further out of just family first and start taking responsibility for what's happening. And that includes widening your concept of what safety looks like with other people. And yeah, it's really tough. And I think it ebbs and flows in life as well, of when we can take that risk and when we can't. And obviously today we're trying to find and offer ways to help people take that risk, but um, we're just deeply in it.
Mhm. What would, okay, I'm so curious because I actually haven't spent a lot of time inside corporations. I've been an entrepreneur for most of the last 12, 13 years. And I've had lots of corporate clients, but I think it's very different. The two of you spent lot of time inside corporate America. And what would you say? Like, what's the invitation for somebody who feels like, well, I can't afford to say something? And, 2.5 years ago, there was genocide starting to happen in Gaza. Like now we're we're kind of looking at poly crises. There's another war that's been started in Iran. There continues to be just catastrophic living conditions in places like Sudan and the Congo, right? Our climate, like it's a lot. And every single day you're just like, oh, and here's another drop of the Epstein files. And what other really gross man is helping run some big corporation or a big department or a country? And so, what would you say at a moment where it feels important for people to actually speak up and at least start to fix their organizations, their institutions? What would you say to invite people to find their courage?
I think, everyone has to, like, these are deeply personal choices. And I think some people, it's like code switching. I think some people figure out how to keep their head down and do the function of their job and separate out what their personal politics are in that space. And then they do their activism and, have their reveal what their full value set is to community outside of that. And I hope that, and I think that's basic. I think that's basic survival, that there is some level of, like, when you ask Lars that initial question of like, how do you feel? Like, if you imagine the feelings of what does it feel like to have this kind of security of a white collar job, like there is, I think, some level of numbness that I was thinking about, like a non-feeling of this. And I mean, I think some people call it also the golden handcuffs. Like there is some part, there is like a contract that you sign literally and figuratively to separate out like courageous revolutionary values from, like, when you're working for a corporation, at the end of the day, it is like you are partaking in like capitalist patriarchal structures that are often perpetuating harmful things. And and so few of us are like, there's no such thing as like being completely pure from that, right? Like we all like exist in this system and shop at certain stores or go certain places or have jobs that have some funding or have not divested from certain things. Like I can't think of a place that's off this grid, or like
Well, you would have to live off the grid entirely, like somewhere in Alaska without a government road.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, where can we be courageous is such a good question, Aparna. And I think there's so many ways to take those steps. Like, first of all, making sure that you have your community that you feel safe and building and learning with, and, practicing mutual aid, where you feel like there are spaces where you can take up space and make noise about the current systems and structures. I think there's always boycotting. I think it's effective. It's powerful. If you don't feel safe marching, like not everyone is an activist that marches in the streets, right? But you can make choices around where you boycott and divest personally. And then my favorite recently, and what I have been also really excited to activate with my students, is around civic engagement.
Yes.
And this world of, electoral politics is not the most revolutionary, as we know, but I think it's so important. And I wish I discovered it earlier in my life, that you don't have to be a lawyer or like a policy expert to go down to Olympia or to go walk into city council and to look your electeds in the eyes and say, oh, hell no, not with my tax money. And to be an influencer around how policy is made. And I think it's powerful. It's important that we know we have access to that and that we can, that our voices matter. And so I think there's so many channels, right, for people to exercise their civic engagement. And I know, Aparna, you are also like a part of so much movement building and boards, and there's so many different ways people can plug in if doing it in the workplace doesn't feel safe or like the way that people can do it.
Yeah, well, and I would say that everybody needs to find one or two things that they care about deeply, whether that change making is happening at work or not. It can happen in community, and like we have like this is kind of a all hands on deck time, and you get to choose your ship, right? You get to choose your ship, but you cannot choose to just put the blinders on and that's the piece that I have really, really struggled with. I would say, especially in the past year, where I've seen a lot of people really lean into phrases like, oh, I'm protecting my peace, or, like, but I'm really up for a big promotion and I don't want to jinx it by saying anything publicly. And I'm like, yeah, but you could still go to city council. You could still vote. You could still knock on doors. You could still bring food to a shelter. Like there's 80 other things that you can do that shows other people what your values are, even if in this moment you feel stuck about not saying something specifically in and around your job.
Well, I also want to just touch on like this idea of saying the thing at work. Like if we're feeling like that's not that you can't do it, the very first step before you even decide that you're going to say anything is to take whatever that feeling is that you're having and talk to other people about it. The first thing you need to do is talk to your coworkers about what they actually care about and listen to it. And to your point around the numbness is unnumbing yourself around the fact that coworkers are going through some form of harm and that harm matters. That I am responsible and responsive to someone who's experiencing harm. And that could be happening interpersonally, or it can be No Azure for Apartheid as a campaign, right? Which started with just a few people talking to each other about the impact of their company perpetuating genocide and mass surveillance. But the very first step that we can all do, whether you're ready to make a move or not, is build the skills around talking to your coworkers around what they care about. Build the skills to listen and practice saying what you care about too. It's not a conversation with HR, it's a conversation with your neighbor. And for me personally, who it has taken me years to unnumb myself, you do get to a point where not acting on that care becomes untenable, not because you as an individual have gotten to some place of righteousness or bravery, but because you're starting to actually see that your experience is collective. That like, if it hurts you, it hurts me, period. And it takes time to get there. But if you're having that itch or that feeling, just start with the conversation and just listen and practice, see how you could start to develop that care in yourself.
Oh, okay. It's not going to surprise either one of you, but whenever somebody tells me that, they can't afford to talk about XYZ, whatever the thing is at work, I'll just ask them, I'll say something like, oh, what does it feel like to work inside an authoritarian regime? And like the shock on people's faces, they're like, no, but that's not what I mean. I'm like, well, tell me what you mean, because I just heard you talk about how you can't talk about whatever world event is happening at your work, right? Like you're not putting it on Slack. You're not, texting your coworkers about it. So what does it feel like to work inside of an authoritarian regime? And I think that alone is just like pretty eye-opening for folks in terms of the values of the organization that they're embedded in. But don't do it, folks, if you don't feel comfortable doing that.
I think Lars is right, though. Like, I think so much of this is also like, how do you find your people? How do you create culture in workplaces where you can speak in uncensored ways about how you're doing, which the personal is political, right? And I do feel like, we're in such an unfortunate moment. I mean, I think I came into corporate DEI, in the wake of George Floyd being killed, of Breonna Taylor being killed, when all of my C-suite leaders were like, help me write a statement to the team, and like sort of announce my human empathy for what's happening for Black employees, and that they can and should take all the time that they need right now. And there was this wave of kind of normalizing some basic humanity, I think, around racial inequities in that moment, even though it was so basic, right? I think that's these lessons we're learning right now in this like peel back and revoking of DEI, is that like DEI was such a baseline. It was like, we know the bar is on the floor and we're like lifting it an inch, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
And now we're in these times, right, where you're not supposed, like, the list of words you're not supposed to say, and
Which includes women,
which includes
according to the federal
women.
government, which includes women.
Girl, don't even get me started on the words, right? And like, gone, even though I was rolling my eyes at like the industrial complex of statement writing, like, I would rather have the attempt at statements than the silence that we're in now, right? And the chill around what we are allowed to say and not say. And what does it mean to find your people to talk to at work? In these times where also campuses and universities are being policed for having, I mean, people are being punished for having kind of like equitable DEI programs, right? Like federally
Big time.
audited. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I saw in the news last week that a big Seattle area philanthropist had actually asked the University of Washington back a gift that she had given the Israel Studies program, because the endowed chair took a position, a pro-Palestinian position, not an anti-Israeli position, but a pro-Palestinian position. And this philanthropist asked for $5 million back. I think that happened 5 years after she had made the gift. And the university did. The university returned it. And that is such a concrete form of policing, because we're literally being told that your assets are going to be taken away from you if you say something that's counter to not what the status quo thinks or believes, but what the people with power and wealth think or believe. We've been talking about a lot of really heavy things. I want to switch gears, and I want to maybe move us to a more hopeful place with some rapid fire. So we're going to try and go through this pretty fast. I have a couple of questions for both of you. Dr. Perez, Dalya, you go first, and then Lars. And so the first one is this. Finish the sentence. The white-collar workers' greatest superpower, if they choose to use it, is what?
Flexibility.
Flexibility. Lars?
Verbal influence.
Verbal influence. Okay. Second prompt. What is your favorite corporate phrase? Ours is obviously, let's circle back. Dalya, what's your favorite corporate phrase?
I mean, is it teamwork doesn't seem work? So cheesy. So cheesy.
Wait, that is my first time hearing that.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Oh yeah, there's a couple versions of it. Teamwork
doesn't
seem work.
Oh, productivity hack. Whoa.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Can you even go after that?
And I just like, as a also like learning and development, leadership development facilitator, I love when we put things in the parking lot.
Oof.
I love a parking lot. Let's parking lot this. It's a full parking lot too. We're really
It's an overflow
Parking a
situation.
lot of cars.
Okay, the third prompt. What is a corporate phase that white collar workers say that actually means I'm scared or I'm worried? What's the stand in? Okay, I'll tell you mine. Mine is I want to be strategic about this.
Mm. I mean, my rapid fire answer was I'm going off camera.
love.
Ooh, I'm going off camera. Lars, what do you have?
We need leader buy-in. Let's get some leader buy-in on this.
Let's get some leader buy-in. Okay. What's one thing the system never told white collar workers about their own power?
Mm. One thing the system never told people. Mm. I think it would have to be, I don't know how to sum this up, but that we sometimes our everyday knowledge, especially as people who don't come from a background of white collar work, is like the brilliance that white collar spaces actually need.
Ooh,
Mm.
yes, 100%.
Oh, beautiful. Um, they don't want you to know that saying no actually does impact the company's culture and trajectory.
Okay. Yeah,
It,
you can
it
say no.
actually does change things.
Okay, saying no matters. All right, here's the last one. If you could say one sentence directly to every white collar worker listening right now about what's possible on the other side of having a scarcity mindset, what would it be?
I would say that at the end of the day, you are valuable, you are brilliant, and even if they lay you off tomorrow, there is something else waiting for you on the other side of this.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, there's something else waiting for you on the other side of it. And it might not even be something that you thought was possible. Um, and Dahlia, you're the living proof of that. Here you are
Yep.
on the other side of it. Okay, folks, we're coming to an end of this episode, and we end every episode with a takeaway and a call to action. And the call to action is something anybody can do if they decide to do it. What would it mean if white collar workers saw each other as the bridge, not an obstacle to collective liberation? What do they need to let go of to get there? And we'll start with you, Talia.
Yeah, I think I'm building off something that Lars was talking about earlier about how can you rearrange time and space in your interactions in the white collar world to have more humanity. So whether it's building in 5 minutes at the beginning of a brand new one-on-one with somebody to ask them about their origin story. Who are you? Where are you from? And offering up things about yourself. I'm the daughter of immigrant and refugee families. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. Things, really simple things. I remember making space for that in my initial one-on-ones and hearing feedback from people that they were so happy to have this kind of human-centered conversation, and they hadn't had a conversation for a while in the workplace that was about kind of their roots or their origin story rather than the bottom line of what we had to get done together. And I think that can really bridge into building more authentic friendship and relationship in the workplace and solidarity when things happen that you really need to speak out about.
Thank you. Lars, do you have one for us?
I do. Stop making your career about you as an individual person, which feels kind of weird for me to say because I don't know, it's hard for me to say because I think I'm learning this too. But the reality is that your career, your sense of safety is not individually yours. everything that we have is because of the relationships that we have with other people. And so when we start to think about how we survive in this world as a shared experience, then I think we can start to create more room to be creative and more caring about how we see our own career. That squeeze might look a little bit different. So an action would be get a group of friends together, like 3 people, whatever you want to do, and just literally play it out. You're just in like play space where you ask each other, if we looked at our financial security and our careers all together, what kind of different moves will we be willing to take? If we expanded the collective responsibility of how we support each other, how would our lives look different? And just be in that dreamscape and see what comes up. And you might be surprised what you actually want in your life. You might be surprised what you actually might think is possible in your life. Doesn't mean that it can be a reality tomorrow, but widen a little bit and see what it feels like.
That's so beautiful. And from the top of it, my first instinct was like, am I going to pay for somebody else's rent? Like, is that the ask? Is that what's being suggested? And by the end of it, I was like, yeah, why not? Why not? If I'm making gobs of money, like, why not? I mean, yeah, of course I would buy somebody else's groceries because it's not somebody else. Like, it's a person that I love and care about and want thriving in this world. Oof, that was okay. I'm going to try this exercise. Dalya, maybe we'll try it together on Sunday when we gather with our little crew here. Okay, folks, that was episode number 3 of the Circle Back Club. Today, we talked about the fear of losing it all and what we as workers do and don't do in service of protecting what we have. We talked about competition. We talked about silence. We didn't have a chance to talk about what happens to our bodies when we're making those choices. So we're going to save that for another episode. And we invited you to ask whether the thing that you're protecting is actually protecting you back. Thank you so much, Dr. Dalya Perez. Before we really end, where can people find you if they want to find you?
You can find me at Dr. Dalya Perez on LinkedIn.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, folks, find her on LinkedIn. And next week, we're going to go deeper into what corporations and organizations don't want you to know and how they shape expectations, design cultures. We're going to talk a lot about social contracts at work. And if this episode landed for you, send it to one person at work who needs to hear it from you. Leave us a review. And if you want to bring this conversation into your organization, you can reach out to us at hello@circleback.club. And if you have a story you want to share with us, you can send us an email or a voice memo as well. I'm Aparna.
I'm Lars.
And we'll be circling back with you.